It was a cold, rainy evening in the city. Cars rushed by with their lights shining through the falling rain, and people hurried to get home. Among them was David Miller, a man who had everything most people could ever dream of: money, grand mansion, expensive cars, and respect from everyone who knew him. But behind his confident smile was a deep sadness that never went away. Years ago, David had lost his wife and only daughter in a terrible car accident. Since that day, no amount of money could fill the empty space in his heart. He had everything, yet he felt he had nothing as he drove through the dim streets that night. His mind was far away, thinking about the past. The sound of the rain tapping against the car windows seemed to echo his loneliness. Suddenly, something caught his eye: a small figure sitting on the sidewalk near a closed cafe. He slowed down and looked closer. It was a young homeless girl, probably around 16 or 17, shivering in the rain. Her clothes were soaked, and she hugged her knees to keep warm. There was something about her, something innocent and heartbreaking, that made him stop the car. For a moment, David hesitated. People often warned him not to get involved with strangers, but something inside him wouldn't let him drive away. He opened his umbrella and stepped out, walking toward her through the puddles. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl looked up slowly, startled. Her big brown eyes were filled with fear and confusion. I'm fine, sir," she whispered, though her voice trembled. David shook his head. "You're not fine. You're freezing out here." He noticed how thin she was. Her hands looked fragile, and her clothes were torn. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said softly, looking down. "But I'll be okay. I always am." Something in her words hit him hard. He remembered how his daughter used to say the same thing whenever she was scared. "Don't worry, Daddy. I'll be okay." The memory sent a chill down his spine. "What's your name?" he asked. "Amara." She replied, her voice almost lost in the rain. "Well, Amara," he said kindly, "you can't stay out here. Come with me. I'll get you something warm to eat." Amara's eyes widened in disbelief. "You don't have to, sir." "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not causing trouble," he replied firmly. "You just need some kindness." After a few seconds, she nodded slowly. David led her to his car and turned up the heat. She sat quietly, glancing around nervously. When he asked when she last ate, she admitted it had been 2 days. He drove her to a nearby diner and ordered her a hot meal, soup, bread, and tea. As she ate, he watched her closely. She thanked him shyly after every bite, as if no one had ever shown her such care before. Between bites, she told him small pieces of her life. She had grown up without knowing her real parents. She had been passed between shelters and foster homes before ending up on the streets. Life had been cruel to her, but she never complained. "Some days are hard," she said, "but I believe things happen for a reason." David smiled sadly. "You sound like someone I used to know," he said quietly. That night, after dinner, David couldn't bring himself to drop her back on the streets. He offered her a guest room at his mansion until she could find a better place. At first, Amara refused, saying she wasn't used to fancy places, but he insisted. "It's just a roof for the night," he said. "You'll be safe and warm." When they arrived at his mansion, Amara's eyes widened. She looked at the tall marble pillars, the shining lights, and the big staircase inside. "This place looks like a castle," she whispered. David chuckled softly. "It's just a house," he said. "A big, empty house." He led her to a cozy guest room and gave her some clean clothes and a blanket. When she thanked him again, her voice cracked with emotion. "No one's ever been this kind to me before," she said. "Why are you helping me?" David paused for a moment. "Because once I had someone who reminded me of you," he said quietly. "And if she were lost and alone somewhere, I'd hope someone would help her too." Amara smiled weakly. "You must miss her." "I do," he admitted. every single day. That night, after Amara fell asleep, David sat alone in his study, staring at an old photograph on his desk, a picture of him holding his daughter Lily on her 5th birthday. She had the same big brown eyes as Amara. The resemblance was so strong it made his heart ache. He tried to shake the thought away. It's just a coincidence, he told himself. But deep down, something about this girl felt familiar, too familiar. The next morning, the house staff looked surprised to see David eating breakfast with a young girl. He introduced her as a guest and told them to make her comfortable. Amara, though shy, quickly won everyone's hearts with her manners and smile. She helped clean the kitchen and even offered to wash the dishes, saying, "I can't just sit around doing nothing." David found himself smiling for the first time in years. There was warmth in the house again. Laughter, kindness, life. Watching her reminded him of how his own daughter used to light up the room. He didn't know it yet. A tea had brought him and Amara together for a reason. The story that began with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night was about to reveal a truth that would change both of their lives forever. Asterisk, the next morning. David woke up earlier than usual. The sound of birds outside his window and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Something he hadn't noticed in years. The mansion, which had felt like a museum for so long, now seemed alive again. It amazed him how one stranger could bring warmth into a place that had felt cold for so long. He walked downstairs and found Amara sitting quietly at the dining table, eating breakfast. She looked much better. Her hair was clean, and she wore the simple clothes he'd given her the night before. But her eyes still carried a sadness he couldn't ignore. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, taking a seat across from her. She nodded politely. "Yes, sir. Thank you again for letting me stay. I'll leave soon. I don't want to be a burden." David smiled softly. "You're not a burden, Amara. You needed help, and honestly, I think I needed someone to remind me what kindness looks like." Her lips curved into a shy smile. "Most people don't stop for someone like me," she said quietly. "They just walk past, pretending I don't exist." "That's their loss," David replied. "Sometimes people forget that everyone has a story." For a moment, they sat in silence. Then Amara glanced around at the tall walls and golden chandeliers. "You must be very rich, sir," she said softly. "I've never seen a house like this." David gave a small, sad laugh. "Yes, I have money, but I'm not sure I'm rich anymore. I lost my wife and daughter years ago. Since then, this house hasn't felt like a home." Amara's eyes softened. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "That must hurt a lot." "It does," he said quietly. "My daughter was only 5. Her name was Lily. She was bright, kind, always helping others. A little like you." Amara blinked, her expression suddenly distant, as if trying to remember something. "Lily," she repeated softly. "That name sounds familiar." David looked up, surprised. "Familiar? How so?" Amara hesitated. I don't know. Maybe I've heard it before." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. "This is the only thing I've had since I was little. The people who found me said I was in an accident. I don't remember much from before that." David froze. His eyes locked on the pendant. His heart started pounding. That necklace, he knew it instantly. He had bought the exact same one for his daughter's 5th birthday, engraved with her initials inside the heart, LM. "May I see that?" he asked, his voice trembling. Amara nodded and handed it to him carefully. David opened the pendant with shaking hands, and there they were, the letters LM shining faintly inside. His breath caught. This belonged to my daughter," he whispered. Amara's eyes widened. "Your daughter?" He looked up at her, his voice breaking. "Yes, Lily Miller. She was wearing this necklace the night of the accident. The police said they found it near the wreckage, but she never came home. Amara went pale. Her hands began to shake. Sir, I think I was that child. The world seemed to stop. David couldn't move, couldn't speak. He stared at her, her eyes, her smile, the faint scar on her forehead. Everything matched the image of his little girl. Only older now. Amara's voice trembled as she continued. I was found near a river. The people who took me in said I had no memory of who I was. They named me Amara. I thought my parents were gone. Tears filled her eyes. But I remember someone calling me Lily. A man's voice. It was the last thing I heard before I woke up in a hospital. David's heart felt like it would burst. His hands trembled as he stood and slowly walked toward her. Amara. Lily. My God, is it really you? She covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't know what to say, she whispered. All this time, I thought I was alone. David pulled her into his arms without another word. They both cried, holding on to each other like time itself had stopped. Years of pain, emptiness, and unanswered prayers melted away in that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, David wiped her tears gently. You're home now. You don't have to struggle anymore. You're my daughter, and I'll never lose you again. Amara nodded, unable to speak through her tears. I always wondered if someone was out there looking for me, she said softly. I guess my heart was right. David smiled through his tears. You saved me, Lily. You brought life back to me. I thought I was helping you, but you helped me more than you'll ever know. That night, as they sat together by the fireplace, David realized something extraordinary. Fate had given him a second chance, not just to be a father again, but to be a better man. The pain that once filled his heart was replaced by gratitude and love. He couldn't stop thinking about how it all began. One moment of compassion on a rainy night had changed everything. The girl he stopped to help turned out to be the daughter he had been mourning for years, and for the first time in a long time. David whispered a prayer of thanks. Because miracles don't always arrive with thunder or light, sometimes they come quietly, disguised as a lost girl in the rain, whispering, "Don't cry, your daughter is alive." The morning sun poured gently through the tall windows of David's mansion, filling the room with a soft golden glow. For the first time in years, the light didn't feel cold. It felt warm, alive, and full of meaning. The sound of quiet laughter drifted through the hallways, a sound the house hadn't heard since his wife and daughter were gone. It was the laughter of Amara, or rather, Lily, the daughter he thought he had lost forever. David stood in the doorway, watching her help the housemaid set the breakfast table. There was a new spark in her eyes. The fear and sadness had faded, replaced by the calm joy of someone who finally belonged somewhere. For a moment, David just watched, afraid that if he blinked, the scene might vanish like a dream. When she noticed him, she smiled brightly. "Good morning, Dad," she said softly. The word Dad hit him straight in the heart. It had been so long since he'd heard anyone call him that. He smiled back, his eyes glistening. "Good morning, my little miracle." They sat together for breakfast, and everything felt different. There was no silence, no emptiness. Instead, there was warmth, conversation, and the quiet peace of family. Lily told him about the years she barely remembered, the shelters, the kind strangers, and the nights she'd prayed for a family she didn't think existed. David listened to every word, feeling both pain and gratitude. He realized how strong she had been to survive all that alone. "I'm sorry you had to go through all that," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. She shook her head gently. "Don't be sorry, Dad. Everything that happened led me back to you. Maybe it was meant to happen this way." Those words stayed with him all day. For years, David had lived believing that fate had been cruel to him. But now, sitting beside his daughter, he understood that sometimes fate breaks us only to rebuild us stronger later that afternoon. David drove Lily to the same riverside road where the accident had happened years ago. The place had been rebuilt, but it still carried memories, both painful and precious. As they stood there, the breeze brushed past them, and Lily whispered, "I remember this place. I remember the sound of water, and a voice calling my name." David's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of release. "I called your name every day, Lily," he said. "I never stopped." She took his hand and squeezed it gently. "And somehow, I heard you." When they returned home, David made a decision that would change both of their lives. He held a small gathering in the mansion and invited his close friends, business partners, and employees. When everyone was seated, he stood beside Lily and said, "Tonight, I want to share a story, one that proves miracles are real." The crowd listened in silence as David told them about that rainy night, about finding a homeless girl in the cold, and about the shocking truth that she was his long-lost daughter. By the end of his speech, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I spent years building companies," he said, "but in doing so, I forgot the real meaning of life. Money can buy a mansion, but it can't fill it with love. My daughter taught me that true wealth comes from compassion and family." He then announced that he would be opening a foundation in Lily's name, the Lily Hope Foundation, to help homeless children and struggling families find shelter, education, and a second chance at life. The room erupted in applause, but all David could see was his daughter's proud, teary smile. That night, after everyone had left, Lily hugged him tightly. "You've already given me everything, Dad. You don't have to do all this." David smiled and kissed the top of her head. "No, sweetheart. You gave me everything. You gave me back my heart." As the two of them sat together under the soft glow of the chandelier, the house that once felt like a tomb now felt alive again, filled with love, laughter, and the quiet hum of happiness. Years later, their story would become known across the city, the tale of a homeless girl who told a millionaire, "Don't cry, your daughter is alive," and proved that miracles still happen. And every evening, when the sun set behind the mansion, David would look at his daughter and whisper a prayer of gratitude. Because he now knew that the greatest fortune a man could ever have wasn't found in banks or gold. It was sitting right beside him, smiling, calling him Dad.